Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and this is the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Andrew Kabrit, co-founder and chief product officer of Seez. Andrew also was chief operating officer of Seez since its founding more than 10 years ago. At Seez, Andrew leads the strategic direction and execution of the company's entire portfolio with a focus on using AI, machine learning, and big data to aid in the car purchasing process. Welcome here, Andrew. Good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell everybody what Seez is.
So what Seez is, so the easiest way of looking at us is we do AI in the automotive space. That's what we've been doing since day one. But as most startups do when they start, especially when you have a few years behind you, we've pivoted a few times in order to fit the market and fit the changes that have happened throughout the automotive industry over those years. So from the start, we were an AI first company. We started with image recognition. That was our background in the beginning. We analyzed the images of the cars, understood what cars we were looking at, trying to give you an idea about where you could find similar cars and what price they would be. Later on, we were dabbling very quickly into the chat space as well. Built our first chatbots back when natural language processing was the big hype of town. It still is. That's what the LLMs are built on. But we dabbled very early with that. And then it was more about like how we could use those technologies to actually leverage inside the automotive space and trying to always stay ahead of the curve using AI technologies from the start. And then with the rise of the LLM models again here, we basically refocused again on that. And now we are focusing primarily on the more communication side, but also now some of the more agentic approaches to AI that's coming in. But in short, we're an AI company in the automotive space.
10 years ago, that's a long time ago to be using
Yeah.
AI. How did you ever pick automotive? And why did you pick that and not something else?
So it actually kind of happened a little bit by coincidence. It was a combination of me working back then in my master's, and I needed to work on a project that had a large data set for image recognition. And one of the things that has the largest data set and also had the best business value was cars because they had already been mapped and laid out from all the different classifieds. So we could much easier like collect that data and map that data in order to train a model, which was where we started out with. We had to find basically the foundational data for this thing here. In parallel to that, Tariq, my co-founder, was looking to start a company as well around making the process of buying cars much simpler, because he found that the process of buying a car didn't really have a natural element to it, and it hadn't really changed in the last 50 years, to be fair. So he wanted to change that up. So those two things came together, and that was how we kicked off on the AI journey, and we kicked off on the automotive space. It was basically a space that had the best data available for doing this kind of stuff here because of the classifieds that were already all around the world and had mapped out what different cars looked like and the years and so on. And then, that we wanted to make the process of buying cars much simpler because we thought it was too complicated for most regular people.
Where is the help that you provide for dealers? Is it for the salesperson? Is it for the dealership owner? Is it the customer? Where do you fit?
Well, so we obviously, in the end of the day, we have to provide value for all of them. Our primary focus is more on the dealerships and trying to make their lives a bit easier by making the life for the customers easier as well. But the end customer for us is the dealerships. It's primarily focused around the sales cycle and the processing of a sale that we're involved with. So that could be, for example, in the customer support. There's a lot of people that will come in and ask very much the same questions around locations of the cars, the opening hours, some details about the dealership's return policies or anything like that. And we saw very early on that this is something we could automate even before LLMs became a big thing. And then since then, we have just expanded on the capabilities on that space there. And then now with the rise of the more agentic and operator bots, we're even going in and helping on doing some of the more tedious workflows that salespeople don't want to do and the back office doesn't want to do. That just has to be done every single time for either regulatory reasons or for this is how it's always been done. So the workflows and the organization is built around that. So that's where we go in and help as well.
You've been doing this for so long. How have you seen the car purchasing or the sales process change over time? Like where was it 10 years ago versus today?
So funny enough, the process itself hasn't changed too much other than there's certain elements that are becoming more digital. But one trend that has really taken shape right now, becoming the biggest thing in the industry right now is this omni-channel kind of experience and trying to bring the automotive space into the same kind of era as everything else, basically on e-commerce. There's a lot of issues when you're buying a car, is that it's not as simple as it should be. It shouldn't, like Tesla, I think, was the first ones to really go in and show that it is possible to make this simple. But ironically, not a lot of the other ones have fully taken that process on the same way Tesla did in the beginning. But that is happening now and has been happening over the last 10 years much more aggressively than it ever was before. And I'm seeing it accelerate more and more. And I'm seeing it also mature in a healthy way, in that it's not just that like the dealers like doing these changes here because it sounds like it's good, but they actually do it in order to create more value for the customer while still catering to the customers that want to feel like safe in this process here, because it is a big buy that they're doing. So that's where we're seeing the most like kind of changes, is a slow pace towards this more omni-channel approach where people can get the same kind of experience and things that they're used to, but they can do it much more conveniently and much more from the comfort of their home than they could in the past. You are seeing also some of these very aggressive players that were coming in and did the full online buying journey, and that did inspire some dealers to do the same. But ultimately, the industry has been very much like this thing here for a while, and is staying very similar to this thing here. But it's moving now because of the AI. It's moving more towards this. Okay, how can we make this process at least more automated and not as tedious for the dealerships in that space?
How has your company grown? Because 10 years ago, this was just an idea, really, for a dealer wouldn't have thought of this.
Yeah.
How did you actually get into the market and then grow? And talk about, you just got acquired recently as well.
Yeah, so when we started out, it was actually as a consumer app. That was the best way we found it to begin with, was trying to create value for the consumers. And then after we had actually started doing that, then COVID happened. Like, we managed to build an app that was like the number 2 in the Google Play Store, and the Play Store, and number 5, I think, on the Google Store. We had done pretty well, and we were like doing like quite nicely. But then COVID happened, and then suddenly all the dealerships cut off all funding and cut off everything around anything that didn't have to do with their core business. And we were like, okay, then it's time for us to pivot. Let's use this situation here to pivot a little bit. We had a proven track record at that point because we had built such a big app. I think we were 2.8 million users. In the UAE, there's only 9 million people, so quite a few users back then. So we had a foundation for that, but we then decided that we were going to use our AI skills and our software capabilities to pivot into helping the dealers instead in their space, because we saw that most of the problems that we were facing on trying to help the customers arrived from the dealerships in the first place. And then we had to shift in and see how can we create value for the dealers as well, so that we can actually fix these problems here. Because ultimately, when we were just focusing on trying to deal with the customers, we weren't really solving we couldn't solve all their problems. We were only solving like some of their problems. And the root of all their problems was actually trying to help the dealerships, because that was where the big challenges really laid. And then, yeah, that's where we then moved into the AI space as well on that.
So tell me about this acquisition. You're now part of another company?
Yes. So one of the key things on AI is data, and it is the infrastructure around that, right? So when we had started we got some really good traction very early on in the process when we launched our product Caesar. That allowed us to scale very quickly to many different countries. So we expanded into Australia, New Zealand, the UK, most of Europe, South Africa, and so on, Mexico. But we still were missing one key thing, was like access to some of the really valuable data. Because we could only, again, look at the surface, like we had to go even deeper. Every single time we went forward, there was always go deeper into the problem, find the root of the problem. Now, by getting this acquisition here, we also got access to some of the most important details for actually being able to provide the best service for the customers, and using the AI for that is access to the data. So with this acquisition here, we're able to tap into Pinewood's massive amounts of data across all the dealerships that have been using them for many, many years, and can now use that on another level. And that was really why we did this acquisition here, is because it's enabled us to take our product from a stage of just being laying on top of the car dealerships to actually being fully embedded into the car dealerships. And every single car dealership we would go into, we could actually provide a much deeper value than we could when we were a third party that was attaching to it. We could try to, like, we were integrating with all the different third parties, as the different platforms before, and getting access to the data. But anyone that's worked with these kind of car dealerships and worked with the data in general knows that the closer you are to the data source, the better the outcome is going to be from any kind of AI model you're building around it. And Pinewood was honestly the company that had the best kind of infrastructure and the best kind of data available. So we thought this is exactly where we want to be.
Does Pinewood do something different than what you do, and then you basically your software is an addition to it?
Yeah, they do something that's significantly different. So they're what's called a DMS, a dealer management system. Think of it sort of like an ERP system, but for the car dealerships. So it manages everything that a dealer needs in order to run their business, essentially. Now, some dealers, of course, add attachment to it themselves on some elements, but in theory, you have everything you need in there. You have CRMs, you have inventory management, parts, and so on. And every time you're doing an order, you do that through the Pinewood system. What we were doing, we were facilitating more around the sale, both on like a consumer part, communication and answering questions, but also on the lighter processes around document signing and so on and so forth. But in the end of the day, that information that we were handling more on the outskirts always had to go back into these DMS systems in order to do the little bit more boring parts, as some people would look at the back office, which is like the invoicing and so on. But because of that, we didn't really touch too much on their domain, and they didn't really touch on our domain. But they needed our capabilities in order to expand their products as well. And we were able to basically use their system and their data and their infrastructure and their workflows in order to expand in both directions. So they got a lot more capabilities outside of just DMS, and we got access to some of the really powerful data that's a lot deeper in their systems.
Where you had the same customers, it basically just comes more integrated. And then I'm guessing that you had different customers and they had different customers, and then that comes together.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when we come together as one, that's where you really get to see how powerful the products actually become in tandem with each other. Because when you're looking at not just the current data that you're collecting, but also your historical data, you can start getting insights into the patterns in your dealership that you were never able to see before. Now, all of this data has laid there for many, many years, because for the last 15 years, pretty much, we've been saying data is the most important thing. And then everybody was talking about business intelligence and so on. But very few people actually actioned on this data, but they collected it and they were preparing for this future that has now arrived. And the good thing was that Pinewood was one of the few companies in the automotive industry. It might sound like crazy that they're one of the few to do that, but in general, most of these systems here, you have to remember they're like very, very old systems that go back to the old mainframe kind of systems. And Pinewood is one of the very modern systems that use actual cloud infrastructure and have APIs. Getting APIs to most of the other systems had proven very challenging for us and for others that wanted to integrate with them. So Pinewood basically gave us access to that and digging in. And when we were able to do that, we could provide information to the dealerships that they simply couldn't find before. So like it was there in the data, but they couldn't extract it properly because they didn't know what they were looking for. Stuff like, for example, which of their mechanics are the most efficient in doing specific types of jobs. Now, this is information that's typically known inside a workshop by the team members. They would be like, yeah, we know that John, he's the most efficient guy to do this kind of job here. But if you're trying to build a centralized system where you're going to be allocating automatically who's going to do what job, then either you need to take up the time of somebody that fully understands the workshop, or you need a more intelligent system that uses the data properly to assess these things here. And that's what we've been able to do here now, because we have access to this really rich data, but also then can apply an AI layer on top of it to do the stuff that normal humans would do. And we can evaluate people the same way a human would, instead of just pure raw data. Because you can take in many more credentials and many more different parameters that matter when you make these decisions here, not just this guy here makes me the most money, therefore he should be the one doing the job.
Where do large language models and GPT fit? I mean, because those are relatively new things. How did you adapt, and where do you put it?
So right now we're trying to see where it actually makes the most sense. But the first layer of it is obviously on the more support side and the human-centric approach. So in general, salespeople should do what they're best at doing, which is focusing on the sales. Everything related to making sure to answer any of your questions before you come into the showroom and prepare anything before you come into the showroom, that's handled by the large language models. So any communication about questions or making sure that you have the right paperwork in place and so on and so forth, that's handled by the LLMs. Everything that has to do with keeping the leads warm for the dealership. So one of the issues is that once you've actually reached out to them, you might still be browsing around before you actually want to go and see there. So making sure that the dealership is still staying in touch with you, still keeping you in top of mind. That's also the part that it's handling with their more on the conversational part. But what's really interesting is the stuff that we're now focusing on because LLMs are able to also do some thinking and to do some more mathematical equations in here. We're looking into also the activities that can be done inside the systems and the optimizations that can be done inside the systems. So imagine, for example, you're a dealership and you want to know which one of your showrooms are performing the best at a specific types of EVs. Now, you could build a BI report for that, but that requires that you go and ask for this request, and it takes a bit of time before you can start doing these analysis here. But if you have a bot where you can just ask a question and it can look through all of your data, then you can get these answers here immediately. So instead of you having to curate all the data, you can just, as a senior manager, ask the questions, and then it will extract that information and come back with information. And the LLM models have a full context window of the different databases that it has access to. So it can understand what information is it actually looking for and what should I put together in order to do this request here, and then can serve back an answer to all these things here. But we're also able to do tasks on behalf of the customer. So LLMs with their thinking models are also able to perform like a lot of the agentic tasks that humans would be performing. So some of the more tedious tasks that require, for example, due to, again, old systems, you might have to put some information into the system once in the dealership system, but then you have to do the same thing into Porsche's system and then into BMW's system. And then like you end up having to go into many different systems, putting the same information because the different OEMs require that you keep their CRMs up to date, but they don't integrate because they're old systems. And therefore, like the agents can go out and do these tasks here on behalf of you and make sure that you get all the correct information from the Pinewood system, get that copied over to the other one. Or if there's some tasks that are like underlying that just need to be done, for example, invoice uploading and so on, we can now implement features in a much smarter way so that we can take care of all of those along the way, not just do a simple OCR scan, but decide where should this thing here go based on the information we're finding and categorize the different invoice types. We can even do tasks like, for example, you're coming in for a service appointment and you're going to need a ride back home. We can book an Uber for you and use the Uber MCPs in order to do those kind of things. So these are all these different types of activities we're looking at implementing and have started implementing in some cases to be able to offer the dealerships these great AI tools and really bring the experience that they're giving to their customer to a level that they have never thought was possible before.
Do you have any sense of the person who buys a car, if they're happier now, if they experience this, or can you tell?
So from the people we've been speaking to until now, and the people we've been having conversations with that have used our products, yes, they are much happier in this kind of way here. First of all, because one of the biggest issues in general, like, and this is just like, this is low-hanging fruit in some situations, but the simple fact that if you're calling in to book a service appointment and you don't, like nobody's picking up the phone or nobody is following up on these kind of things here, the fact that we always will make sure that this thing is done, that is just a great, like, first take. It's a low bar, but it's a great start on these things here. But then once you go out and they experience like the extra capabilities that are in there, for example, when they start asking about the prices, or if they start asking about if they can reschedule, when they realize that they can do it like both on SMS and on email, that's when they start seeing like the real value in this thing here. And these are the kind of experiences that have like lifted up the dealerships to a level. They don't know that we're the ones that are doing this behind the scenes. They think it's the dealerships that are doing it. And in many situations, they don't even know that it's an AI that they're talking to about this. They just feel like they're getting a much better experience from the dealerships. We don't hide that it's an AI. We never want that. But in general, just because the experience is so natural, like they don't even question it.
Oh, that's the service experience. Is that where the big action is versus the sales experience, or is it both?
It's both. So in the service experience, it's just because that's where there's a lot of people that have a lot of annoyance around like the process of serving a car. But it's the same on buying a car. Like a lot of the questions that we're getting, like, so when you're searching today, the websites that you've been using today, for example, for, let's take Auto Trader, they look the same today as they did 20 years ago. If you look at the search filters, like you're going in and you're looking at which color do I want, how many like doors do I want, if you're going really advanced. But you've never asked a question like, how many cup holders is there in a car? Because nobody bothered to go in and look for that. Or ask the question about like, does my golf clubs fit in this car? These are the real questions that people have that they're trying to deduct from these other types of questions, or looking by pictures and so on and so forth. These are the things that the bot is able to answer. So we had, for example, one customer, I don't know why she cared so much about it, but she wanted a car that had 9 cup holders. It was very important that it had at least 9 cup holders. And we were able to serve her back up a car that had that. That was a Yukon that had that. So it was able to answer that from a really weird inquiry, but come back with an answer that a salesperson would have never known. Like they would have probably laughed when they heard that. So these are the kind of examples that come out from the sales experience as well, where you're able to search and you're able to refine your needs or define your needs much more specifically, and thereby get the right car. And when you've done that, then the likelihood of you converting with that dealership is much higher, because they've helped you so far and they have you, like they're in contact with you. So converting you is much easier.
We know that contact centers are getting totally automated because of AI, obviously. What about the sales process? Is there going to be not necessarily a need for a salesperson in the future, or is their role going to be different?
I think their role is going to be different. I think there will always be a need for a salesperson. AI is extremely powerful, and I'm the first one that pushes for AI first and everything. But I don't want to underestimate the value of humans. The only places where humans would be replaced is places where humans were not really needed in the first place. I would say like the real value with the salespeople is the human connection that you also have, and it's the knowledge that when you're coming down there to the dealership, you're getting a guy that's looking beyond just the pure numbers, that's talking to you about your situation and actually advising you on all the details, that uses AI to find the right information and so on, but is able to make decisions. Because in the end of the day, you don't want to just talk to a robot that just looks at a schema. You want to actually have a conversation with a guy that advises you and has their own real life experiences that they can advise with. So we're not looking to replace the salespeople. We're more looking to like really give them superpowers so they don't have to waste time. Like the majority of their time is wasted on answering emails and following up on leads and doing all these kind of workflows that don't really make any sense, doesn't add any value. They hate doing it. If you ask them, it's the jobs that they hate the most. These are the things that we're going to take out of the way, and then we make them focus on the stuff that they really like, which is the human interaction. And this is also what the customers prefer. When you walk into a showroom, what you want is to be greeted by a human, not to just stand there alone and browse around. Unless you want, like, if you want to browse, then that's also always nice. But the minute that you need somebody, you want to have somebody available. You don't want to have to stand in a queue in order to start the process of buying a car. That's what you can do now, because the AIs are taking away all the stuff that you actually don't need humans to do.
A year from now, we're having a conversation about the same thing. What's going to be the main topic we're dealing with?
The main topic we're going to be dealing with is going to be, I think it's going to be very much around these operators and how they're going to be coming in and changing the space. I think a year from now, we're going to be seeing most of the dealers, like most of the salespeople, will have started using more voice communication. Like I know that voice has been, you've seen that for most of the other LLMs, but this is being adopted right now by the automotive industry. I think voice is going to be a massive part of this. And then it's almost as if every salesperson will have an assistant. And not an assistant in like Siri kind of way, but like functioning the way Siri was dreamt of being, and then inside the dealerships. So you can just go and say, please go and create this customer. Here's the driver's license. And then it creates all of that. And please give a valuation for this vehicle, and then some pictures and a registration card, and off it goes. This is the world that I imagine we're going to be seeing like in a year from now, or at least starting to see that rolling out. Like the adoption is always what takes the most time, but these are the kind of technologies that you will start noticing in the dealerships.
Well, I look forward to conversation in the year. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things. I'm Chuck Martin.